Hello, welcome to Mosaics with Idaho Office for Refugees. I'm your host, Holly Beach. We're here today with a special guest. Her name is Sanga Zamaraikamal Pori, and she is a senior at Boise State University studying political science. She herself came through the refugee resettlement program at the age of 4 to resettle in the U.S. with her family. Now she's passionate about one day going forward in her career and helping others walking a similar path. So Sanga, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, thank you for welcoming me, Holly.
Yeah, welcome. Well, before we jump into our topic of today, which I'm really excited about, I want people to have a chance to get to know you a little bit. So what would you like to share about yourself?
So, like you mentioned, I am studying political science at Boise State. I'm in my last year. I did kind of an accelerated program in high school, so I got my associate's degree, and I've been in college for 2 years, and I'm about to graduate. So there are pros and cons to that, but nonetheless, feels good to finally finish.
Congrats.
And I am from a refugee background. I'm Afghan Pashtun from the province of Laghman, and so I do hold that very dear to me. And yeah, I'm just really focused on these next couple months trying to figure out what my niche is going to be after I graduate, and I'm looking forward to that trajectory.
Yes, well, congrats. I know you said there's pros and cons to going through it fast. I can totally
Yeah.
understand that. It's a special time of life, but at the same time, now you get to move forward and see what's next. So that's exciting. Good work.
Thank you.
I want to talk about something that you said was on your mind, and that's that, the word refugee applies to a lot of different people who had to flee their home country to seek safety. And within that group is a whole diverse mix of people from different countries, languages, faith backgrounds. But even within the different country groups, there's a whole diversity of people too. And I think just from the outside looking at the term refugee, some of that nuance might get missed.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
So speaking on Afghanistan specifically, I think a lot of people kind of group us like as a monolith. And yes, we're all Afghan, and a lot of people there's a lot of unity there and a shared culture amongst Afghans. But within Afghanistan, there's multiple provinces, and within that, there's multiple ethnic groups. So even just within one country, before any refugee even takes place, there's already a lot of diversity. And so I find it fascinating that once I introduce myself as an Afghan to somebody, they'll be like, oh, I know an Afghan. And then they're like, do you speak Farsi? Like my friend, they speak Farsi. I'm just like, I do, but I actually speak Pashto as well. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. Because they don't understand that there's or I guess they fail to understand the scope of refugees from one country specifically. So I feel like it's interesting because for there to be that much diversity in a country, with refugees all together from multiple places, there has to be even more. So kind of just not treating it as a monolith is very crucial. And also in terms of experiences, a lot of people, there's this kind of stereotype and this perception that refugees came with very little. And that is the case for many, but a lot of people had higher education from the countries that they're from. And so to be perceived as somebody that's starting all over again when they've actually had many educational accomplishments, many career accomplishments, it can be a little bit daunting and a little bit hard to experience as a refugee, and you're grouped into this category of people that need to completely start all over again when you've already experienced so much in your life. So I would say that diversity within ethnic groups and languages, and yes, all of these exist, but also within the literal experiences that people have had, it's very important to not just assume that these refugees have come from little understanding of education or the workplace and things like that.
Yeah, a huge scope of life experiences, opportunities, and what was going on in their lives at the time of resettlement. So that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that. I want to hear more, too, about your story. So you resettled at the age of 4, and that was, over 10 years ago now. We're maybe almost 15 years ago. Okay. So it's been some time. In more recent years, the U.S. has welcomed a large group of people from Afghanistan after 2021 when the U.S. military evacuated. So they have their own experience and their own way of getting here, and the timing of it and the growth of the Afghan community here in Idaho in the U.S. So how would you think that the experience, what was that experience like for you, and what differences do you notice in your experience versus people maybe resettling in the more recent years?
I've noticed, I think a big part of it is that in my early years here, there wasn't a huge community of Afghans. I mean, I think there was like a handful that were pretty close, like pretty tight knit. Um, and I didn't really understand the concept of like me being an Afghan refugee at that young of an age, and it kind of like developed through a couple of years. So when I would like be at school and I'd hear somebody speaking a different language that wasn't just English, because my understanding was, oh, we're here and we speak English, then I'd be like, oh, they're probably like me. So it was a little bit difficult for me to feel like a kind of like a sense of isolation that, yes, I know that I'm not from here. I was born somewhere else and I'm a refugee, but I don't really see other people my age that have had this exact experience as me. So it was a very small community. And then growing up and then past like 2021, the influx of refugees from Afghanistan, a lot more people here have like people that are within their age range, and they have that community. And these past years, the Afghan community has become very strong and very built and even more tight-knit. So when you come into that, it's probably a lot more welcoming than it is for like how I had it and how I perceived it, because I feel like it was harder for me to battle those two identities of being, in an American school and things like that, but also having like a very Afghan, very Pashtun household. Whereas, and then not having that exposure to my culture when I leave the house. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's different for people now because of that larger community, that they can find their sense of belonging like outside of their household, and they can find it in Afghan friends and communities and restaurants, because we have a couple more of those now. So I would say that that's how it's, I guess, like the most significant difference that I would find is just like friends and things like that, like more people my age I didn't really have exposure to when I was younger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You've mentioned being Pashtun, and I don't know if a lot of people have an opportunity to learn a lot about that culture. Can you share with us what it's like for you to be Pashtun?
I think it's a huge part of my identity that I'm very proud about. And I think that there are certain values that being Pashtun has like instilled in me and has kind of like given me a really important outlook on life. And I think that amongst Afghans, there are many ethnic groups and we all like work together very cohesively. And sometimes there are like negative stereotypes about like being Pashtun and things like that we're very like, sometimes you can be aggressive or conservative, and a lot of that stems from like the very traditional like values that Pashtun people might, hold dear to them. But yeah, I think that it's a huge part of my identity that I'm proud of, and I want to reshape it and want to like kind of push back those stereotypes, because I feel like they're a very hospitable kind of people. And I feel like a lot of people undermine it because for like the Taliban, for example, their perception of them is that they're majority Pashtun, and that could be factual, but I don't think that like looking at a certain group of people and seeing how they represent themselves and their identity, and then you shift that onto everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because me, for example, against that stereotype, I do feel like I'm a very like socially progressive person, and a lot of Afghans would not assume that because I'm Pashtun. So it's like I always try to like make it a point that it is something that I'm proud of. It is a part of my identity, but the negative like stereotypes that are attached to it, I'm very opposite of that. So making it clear that the good parts of like my culture are like what I really want to uplift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The hospitality part, strong family. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say that. I went to a small university, and it's tied to a certain religious denomination. Yeah. And so now if people just meet me and hear that, I can see that they are making assumptions about like what I believe. And maybe at this point in my life, I have some evolving ideas on certain things, but it takes getting to know me to know that, and not just seeing that like label on my resume. It's different from what you're talking about. But
no, it can be similar, in social context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the social context. So, so what's it like? You have your family and that culture, like you said, and then you also grew up with the schools and the society of American culture. How do you mesh or balance those parts of your life?
I think I've gotten a lot better at it now, but growing up it was a little bit difficult because my household specifically, we were very Afghan in the sense that like we don't speak English at home. It's the cultural customs are very similar to how they are back home. So it was a little bit difficult to like switch from a very like American school and then have that kind of culture when I come home. But growing up, I've learned to like balance both and appreciate it for what it is, because I know not a lot of Afghans can experience that, having the authenticity of their native language in their home. So just knowing that I'm able to experience that, being grateful for it, and then also taking in the good parts of what I guess this country has offered me, like the education and things like that, while also not trying to lose my identity. So rather than being kind of upset that, sometimes I'm not able to kind of like communicate everything that I'm doing at school or everything that's happening to me outside of like my household to my family at home, there are good parts in that because it actually keeps me grounded. So just, I guess, the trajectory of like understanding it and valuing it versus like growing up and kind of like battling like between which one is feels more like me, kind of meshing them together is probably what's made me feel more comfortable.
Has that been something in your like teenage years that weighed on you? Like which one feels more like
hmm
me?
I think for sure in my teenage years because I I there's no doubt about it. Like I love being Afghan. It's all I talk about to people that aren't Afghan. But it was very difficult to like perfectly translate what my home like was like. Like no guys, like genuinely, it's very traditional, because a lot of people think like, oh, there has to be like a good amount of acclimation. You guys have been here for so long, and I agree there is in the, I guess, the social sphere, but at home it's still very traditional. So it was hard for me to communicate that in my teenage years and have like my friends understand me. But I've again like learned to be very fond of it, and it's actually really nice for people to see that, for people to see um, that kind of like tradition and things like that.
And when you're talking about tradition, do you mean like holiday customs, foods, just ways of, can you have any specific
I
examples of
would
how that plays
say
out?
again, like our language, we very firmly speak Pashto at home. We're always talking to each other. It's very loud house. And yeah, food, customs like that. I guess the nature of my house, it's a very open feel. Like my nephews are always running around. So it's nice to like not be ashamed of those things and kind of like nurturing those values instead.
I want to talk about your childhood a little
hmm
bit. Like you said earlier to me that your earliest memories are actually from Russia.
hmm
Can you share more about life was like for you? I know you probably don't remember a
Yeah.
lot, but for your family and for you before you resettled.
I can't remember it too specifically. I just know that when I think about Russia, I don't know if this is just because of the media, but when I look back on it, it has like that blue filter on it, like
Mm.
just very like a depressed, it is a very depressing country to be in, I feel like, especially in those years with the government there and everything and the neglect of immigrants and refugees that come into the country. So I don't see, when I look back on it, it wasn't a very good living state, which is why we resettled again. And I think that like seeing hope when we came here was probably one of like the best childhood memories. And I don't know specifically who it was, but through the resettlement agency that we were a part of, there were two women that helped us kind of get like a little bit more exposure to American culture. And I remember, I don't, it's bits and pieces, but we would like go on like little activities with them, and it was nice. And I remember like we did something with horses in the mountains in Idaho, something like that. And it's really nice to have to probably like, I know my parents definitely had hardships in Russia and before that in Afghanistan. So to have that like little bit of hope when you enter America and you see the opportunities and the amount of refugees there are here, and it's definitely better treatment than there is in Eastern Europe. So it's nice to have that like, I guess, kind of change in expectations.
Hmm.
hmm
Kind of on that thread, when you were newer in the US, and this doesn't have to be at age 4, just like in those
Yeah.
early years when maybe you started to have more
hmm
memories, was there anything like amusing or surprising or discouraging about some of those experiences trying to like find your way as someone who came through refugee resettlement in a new place?
I think like what was like the most amusing to me as a kid is I had a lot of friends like kindergarten like in elementary school from different backgrounds, and I just thought that was so interesting as a kid. Like I would try to like listen to the languages that they spoke because it made me feel more comfortable, and I didn't just feel like the only person, because I knew like even though I was young, I knew that I wasn't from here. I knew that I was conscious enough to know that I have moved from a different place and this country is new to me. So to be around other people, not Afghan, but other people that had similar backgrounds, it was really nice to see that in elementary school. So that was probably one of my
Mm.
favorite parts. And then I guess what was a little bit discouraging and upsetting and hard to understand as a child is when teachers would, and I understand the sentiment of trying to get someone to speak English and be more fluent in that aspect, but kind of like being praised for doing quote unquote like American things. So if I spoke English really well and things like that, my teachers would praise it heavily and they'd be like, no, your accent is getting really good here and things like that. I thought it didn't make me feel very good then. I've had kind of like confusing feelings because I knew that part of my identity was the fact that I'm from somewhere else and I speak a different language, so my English isn't going to be perfect. To be praised for the fact that it's getting really good and getting like how other kids speak it that are like here natively, it was a little bit strange and it was a little bit discouraging because it made me feel like there were more eyes on me. Like there are, since you're a refugee, an immigrant, there are more eyes on you on how you're acclimating and growing up, and even into middle school, it was a little bit hard to kind of like process that.
Yes, I see what you're saying. That's intended as a compliment, but it's
Yeah.
also implying that the old way is worse than the
Yeah.
new way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good insight. Kind of on that thread, part of the goals of refugee resettlement is that people can truly feel a sense of belonging in their new community. Maybe they weren't born here, but a lot of us, weren't born here, or our grandparents weren't born here. So there needs to be a way to help people build a sense of like belonging. And
Yeah.
did you find things that were pivotal for you in establishing a sense of belonging?
I'd say, I think again, like Idaho isn't very diverse, but the diversity that there is here, it makes you feel very, it's a very open space to express like the culture and the place that you are from. So growing up, and we'd hold like Afghan community events, like for Eid parties and things like that, where we would get together, wear our cultural clothing, and there's Afghan music and food and things like that. That made me feel very welcomed because it's like there's a replica of my culture here, and it's so real and it's so raw, and there's so many people that are willing to take part in it. Um, and it's just encouraged. And a lot of people, when you tell them that you're Afghan or you're from somewhere else, they want to listen, they want to hear your story. I feel like, to add on to a little bit about what is discouraging about that, is I tell people that I'm Afghan and that I'm not from here, and they'll always ask me like, oh, you don't have an accent though. You don't, well, I've been here for 15 years. So yeah, and I came here young, so that's why I don't have an accent. So it's like those kind of like preconceived like beliefs that they have about people that are refugees and from certain places. And it's like, well, you're not from here, but you don't have an accent. Like you speak like an American. It's like, it's discouraging because, okay, well, you can't undermine my identity. It's still a part of who I am. And I guess the people that don't do that and they understand that I've had a different experience than them, it helps me feel more welcomed, and it actually makes me feel like there are perspectives that can uplift refugee voices than more so that there aren't.
Yeah, the perspective of each individual person
Yeah.
has their story and their experience,
Mhm.
and getting to know each other as individuals while honoring what people have gone through.
Yeah.
Yeah. You, like we said, are studying political science now, and mention your other areas of study. Is it international studies?
So with political science, there's three emphases at Boise State, and I chose the international relations and comparative politics focus.
Okay. And you had mentioned to me before that part of your passion for studying this is so that, one day you can incorporate that into helping refugees.
Yeah.
Can you share more about that and your dreams?
So political science specifically I chose because I've always just loved politics, government systems, and how that affects humanity and how people are treated through that lens. And because I knew that I liked it, I knew that I wanted to do refugee work in the future, but I knew that I liked politics. I was like, I'll try to make this work, and I'll try to intertwine it, because it does have to do with policy making and all of those factors. And I'm also trying to achieve a nonprofit management certificate, which will kind of like hopefully open paths towards like nonprofits and things like that. Because in the future, way, way, way in the future, I hope to open a nonprofit that specifically focuses on helping Afghan women, like, I guess, get their education and work and feel like they are actually a part of a working, functioning society when they move from Afghanistan into America. So that's like a focus that I have in the future. And yeah, there's also like a lot of options. I don't know specifically, but through political science, there's like journalism options. And I feel like I can highlight refugee stories and other things that are happening globally with the international relations perspective that also impact people that will become refugees, and to have that focus on people. So yeah, I definitely do like the area of study a lot.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's good to focus on the policy part because so much of our work is focused on the symptoms.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraged when people focus on the root causes. How can we make this better at the root cause and maybe avoid these symptoms in the future rather than just running to aid the symptoms?
Yeah.
So that's cool to see that that's part of your focus as well. So Sanga, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the communities in the U.S. are stronger because of, different perspectives and cultures that immigration and refugee resettlement brings.
I think when we think about our day-to-day lives, we see school and work as part of like the strongest components. And in that, it can be a little bit draining, and it can actually make you, it doesn't really open your mind up to be having conversations with the same kind of people every single day. So when we have people with different backgrounds in school environments and your work environments, and hopefully in a lot more higher up positions, it can bring that kind of like cultural awareness, and it can in turn make them feel better, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. You try to uplift each other. And so I think that what they bring is different, I guess, like experiences, because like I mentioned before, a lot of people that come from refugee or immigrant backgrounds, they have very like they have strong units and support systems, so they have a good head on on their shoulders. They're very work driven and very like education oriented for the most part. So they're people that will come in with very strong mindsets, and that only benefits work environments, school environments, the community where you're at, and they have like the best stories to tell. Like if you're someone that's very fond of listening to stories, I think like someone with a refugee or immigrant background it's very nice to hear those stories from them. And like I mentioned again, like they could come from very like high up educations from their home country, or they could have like experiences that they're building on here. It's very nice to see that rather than like a traditional American pipeline that we see. So to have those different perspectives, it almost brings like a different aspect into how we understand humanity and makes us a little bit more open-minded and understanding of each other.
Yeah, it's been a joy for me to get to experience the different cultures, having grown up in this area, but still having different understandings and cultures and foods and art and dance that I get to see here in my hometown that are from all over the world.
Yeah.
It's a huge honor, and it's something that makes it a joy to live where I live. And so I'm very sad for the hardship and the circumstances that led people to have to do that. But then at the same time, I'm very grateful for the relationships and
the
culture
exposure,
that comes from that. So it's been cool at like World Refugee Day or our annual conference and storytelling events. It really does open up your mind, and it gives you can kind of see yourself in some of the things that they share, and it kind of can give you hope for your own life. And I'm curious to hear from you during maybe hard times in the past that you've gone through. How have you kept your hope through that and kept yourself from despair?
I think that one of the important parts of it, and I don't want to get like too theological on here, but is like definitely my religion. And I view like me being a practicing Muslim as a very personal thing. So I try to practice it, the best way that I can for myself and for my like the betterment of my success and things like that, and how I view the world. So it's a very personal thing to me, like the faith that I have. And during hardships, it's always like that feeling of like, well, nothing would happen if it's not meant to be. And not even in a religious sense. I feel like a lot of people can have this perspective of like, things don't happen just so that they can happen. It's always a buildup, and it's like a chronological, and it's for a reason. So I try not to get too hung up on things that upset me, because it's like, well, I can just have faith and move forward. And it actually helps a lot. It helps me a lot in those times where it gets a little bit difficult, especially I feel like with finals and everything this past semester, and I just started my position with Neighbors United. Juggling that was a little bit hard in the first couple months, but then having that faith of like, okay, well, I am where I need to be. And having faith also makes me a little, like, it brings a lot of humility to me, where it's like, I'm complaining about this and it's hard. And yes, it's hard. And I can not invalidate my feelings. Like, it is a hard experience to be juggling so much. But there are people that maybe aren't able to have all of these opportunities like me. So just kind of grounding myself is another way that I can just get through hard times. It's like, well, I have what I need. I still have a roof over my head. I have food, water, shelter. I have everything that I need. I have a good job. I have good friends, good school. It's just this little bump in the road, but I'll get through it. It's kind of like, it keeps me pushing.
Mm-hmm. How has your experience as a refugee shaped the way that you contribute to your community today?
I think my specific experience from being here so young and then growing up here for a majority of my life, it brings a different perspective. And I kind of like that I have a different perspective than other Afghan refugees that have come here more recently, because it's not what people expect. I tell them I'm Afghan, and then I tell them that I'm also a refugee, and they're a little bit like confused. And it's nice for me to kind of represent the variety of what being a refugee looks like. So it's not always like we're here immediately after like a war-torn event happens, and that's very devastating. And of course their experiences are very, very valid, but there's also like a variety to it. Like, you could be displaced so many times before you get to where you are, and kind of bringing like exposure to that part is very important to me. And yeah, I guess a lot of my values as a refugee, I try to like shed light towards that in my community as well. Like, I know the importance of what it's like to need to move from a different place. And then I've been here for so long, I've experienced the opportunities that I can get. So I think having that kind of like lens, and I've had it all. Like, I've went through school and I've went through like many jobs here in the US. I can tell you that being a refugee is very important, rather than people that, on the other end have been here for a couple of years and have experienced it but not as long term. So I think I can, like, on the end results of what it's like to be a refugee that has finally is like feeling comforted in where they are, I think I can bring that perspective, and it's really nice to see.
Mm-hmm. What's something that you've done in the past year? I know we've heard about your accomplishments at school, but is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you're really proud of?
I think, okay, one thing, at the beginning of this year, I put the hijab on, which was low-key, like, kind of crazy for me, because I just woke up one day and I put it on, and I was
you
like,
weren't wearing it before?
No, I started this year in January.
Okay.
And I was just like, it sounds so corny to say, but nothing felt more right. I was like genuinely confused as to why it didn't feel hard for me. And yes, there are definitely some difficulties with wearing it, but it felt so natural, and I didn't really think twice. Never, well, hopefully for right now, I don't want to jinx myself, but I never feel bad or feel like compare myself too much when I'm wearing it. So that's like a huge accomplishment for me this year, to be a walking representation of my faith and my background. I think that's a huge thing, and it makes me want to applaud people that have done it for way longer than me, because wow, like, it feels good, and it's definitely hard. And also this year, like, getting that position with Neighbors United, being the fellow and the project assistant for Agnew Beck, it's definitely very rewarding. I think that what Neighbors United does, their scope of work, is really related to what I want to do in the future. So to have that exposure now, I'm very grateful. And yeah, and when I told my family that I got that position, they were very happy for me, and kind of having their support makes me feel really good about myself, So I'm really proud of myself for that.
Yeah, I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
I'm curious, if it's not too personal to ask, and you can tell me if it is, what led you to changing your mind about wearing the hijab?
I think, well, I always knew that I wanted to wear it, but my family is very conservative and religiously conservative, but they've never like forced anything on me. And I know a lot of people that wear hijab from a young age. Not everybody, a lot of people, it's choice, but their family has that expectation of them. And my family had an expectation of me dressing very modestly, and modest fashion has always been something that I'm like very passionate about. But the hijab, I'd wear it on and off like through high school, and my high school was okay, sorry, I'm getting like
No,
sidetracked, but my high school was a smaller high school, and I think I was the only Afghan girl, only Muslim presenting girl in that entire high school, like 9th through grades 9 through 12. So it was already hard then. And then I'd wear hijab like here and there. And I guess the attitudes that I would get were probably like not the best, you know? And then in middle school, I wore it a couple times, and this guy in our, like, I don't know, it was a class where we built things or whatever. He pulled it off, and my friends at the table were laughing, and I was like, Arr.
No.
And because I was wearing it on and off, I decided not to wear it the next day, because it's like, you know. So it was definitely harder in the beginning, but at the beginning of this year, I was starting an internship with the Idaho State Legislature, and I was like, nobody here knows me. Let me just put it on. And so I wore it one time, and I was like, okay, well, now I can't take it off. Everybody's seen me with it on, so it's weird. Okay. And then, yeah, I'd work a lot. Like, I'd be there a lot. So I was wearing it every day. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to take it off when I go to class. That's weird. And so I just wear it to class, and I was like, okay, so I guess it's my life now. Like, it is what it is. And I liked that switch into it where it wasn't so hard on myself. Like, you're going to start tomorrow. You're going to start tomorrow. It was kind of like, okay, it is what it is. Like, you're wearing it 90% of the time. You love it. There's really nothing else for you to like wait on. It's better for you to do it now than later and feel regret. And I already feel like I wish I wore it sooner, you know? So if I would have waited any longer, I think that would have just built up. So I'm glad that I did it where I did it. And yeah, I think I'm very content with how it happened.
I'm sorry about that violation in school. That's awful. These days, do you feel like it gets you any different kind of looks or treatment, or do you feel like it's more natural now? Like,
I think when I talk about it to my friends, it's actually like interesting because they don't believe me all the time. But I think with hijab, I find it very interesting because I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but there's a certain cautiousness that people have around you. And it's like I'll like say I'm going grocery shopping and someone is in my vicinity, they take a step back. And it's like, okay, yes, I could take this in like a prejudice kind of way, which sometimes it can be. But other times it's almost in a respectful way because they understand my faith and they understand that I'm a hijabi. And I think that like that has made people have a different perspective of me. And yeah, just more, just like cautiousness. A lot of men are very cautious. Like, they put their heads down when like I'm near. It's like, I've never thought that it would be the way that it is, but it's interesting, and it could be a good thing and a bad thing because a lot of people don't. There's kind of like this like fragility with being a hijabi where people think that you're kind of like this very calm, like very reserved kind of person. And then when you talk or you do anything or you're expressive, it kind of shocks them. So yeah, them being cautious, it could be a good thing because you kind of get your space and you're respected for your faith if you interpret it that way. But also it could be a little bit isolating sometimes because it's like, you can talk to me, like you can ask me directions, like we can have a conversation and I'm not gonna freak out about it.
Yeah, like at the grocery store, like a silly comment or a joke, a passing joke, you know, just like, but you feel like maybe treated as more, oh, she's.
Yeah, like I'm like a walking, like not target, but I'm just like, I don't know, like it feels like there's way too many eyes on me sometimes.
Yeah.
When sometimes I feel like it should be the opposite, like you're like, as a hijabi, you should just be like not perceived at all because you're completely covered. But if anything, for me, it's like I just feel the opposite. I just feel like people look at me more and they're more attentive and things like that.
Yeah, maybe they get more nervous of their own actions around you, and then you feel like treated like you're
and
not
then
just
I feel
a
that
fellow
it's like, guys, you can be normal. Like I'm not gonna freak out.
Yeah, like I'm just here getting groceries too. I'm goofy too, you know.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective. In the State House, when you worked there, was it ever an issue for you?
No, I don't think so. I don't know if there were other hijabis while I was interning there. I don't think that there were, but it was a very nice environment, and I liked the people that I interned with. So
that's great. Yeah. That's a really good experience to have. I want to hear a little bit more about Sanga outside of like, you know, your dreams and school and career, just who you are and what you love to do, what makes you laugh, what are like your favorite things.
Well, I love my nephews. I already bothered Holly talking about my nephews before we started this.
It was not a bother.
No, I love my nephews, and they're 2 years old, 2 months apart. I just love watching my nephews grow up, and they're just like, they have so much character, and I can't wait to see what they'll do. And I can't wait for more nieces and nephews, to be honest with you, hopefully.
Yeah.
And in my free time, last summer, I got a little bit bored, and I picked up sewing again because I've sewed like here and there throughout my life, and I picked it up from my mom. My mom is insane. Like the things that she makes, she's insane. And she's like so nonchalant about it. She's like, I mean, it is what it is. But it's like, no, like she's crazy with that. But yeah, so I feel like modest clothes, especially being a hijabi, like and having like wanting to express your certain style, it's very hard because a lot of things are one expensive and they're like not cute enough to be expensive and they're not as I guess like accessible. So what I did during the summer was I'd buy like fabrics or I'd go thrifting and I'd get like kind of ugly long dresses, but they were long. So I'd just like cut them up, sew them up, like give like add different designs and make my own shirts, make my own long shirts, like dresses, things like that. I think that brought me a little bit like of comfort, like expressing my creative side because I feel like I don't get creative a lot. So I do like that.
That's so
And when I
cool.
was younger, I was like dead set on being like, I was like, no, for sure, I'm being a fashion designer when I grow up. Like, there's no other way. But now I don't see myself doing that, but it's definitely a fun hobby. Yeah.
Do you ever make videos? Like some of the videos that come across my reels are people going to thrift stores
Like
and
thrift
finding
flipping.
the most ugly thing and then they make it so
Wait, that's so
cute.
funny. I think I have like a little like just for myself to send my friends of like the before of a dress and then how I like make it after to fit my style. Cause I really like Afghan, Asian, South Asian like pieces and like embroidery. And so what I did last summer was I get like clothing that were a little bit plain and then add that embroidery or add that beading onto it. So it's like, okay, yes, I'm not paying an arm and a leg for this to be exported somewhere else. I'm expressing that myself. So I thought that was really cool to like and then film the before and after of how that turned out.
I would love to see some of these before and
Hmm.
after pictures. So your mom, is she the one that taught you how to
Yeah, she taught
sew?
me, but I don't remember how I learned because it was a really long time ago. But yeah, she taught me.
That is so cool.
Hmm.
To see what people can do with just taking a concept or something that others would write off as like,
Yeah.
oh, that's an ugly donation at a thrift store
Hmm.
and really making it
Yeah,
beautiful.
and it's very sustainable.
Yeah.
Because fast fashion's gonna get us guys. So just be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, as we wrap up, I'd just love to hear any final thoughts you have that could be about what we talked about or any advice you have for others, whether they themselves have gone through resettlement or if they're welcoming others who went through resettlement.
I think, like we touched on in the beginning, the scope of what it's like to be a refugee and have that background, again, with the different ethnic groups and the different, because it's not just Afghanistan, almost like every country has so many ethnic groups that reside within it. Like, I think having that understanding of they're not going to be like the monolith understanding that I have in my head. They could have, they could speak a completely different language than what I assume or what I've picked up on. Having that exposure, having that understanding, I think it's very crucial with refugee experiences. And it also makes people feel very seen because that is a very vulnerable time in their life to have to relocate and acclimate to an entire different atmosphere. To know that people aren't grouping you up with the understanding that they have of what a refugee is, and then specifically of what a refugee is from your country, it's nice to know that like they that you're able to have that expression and you don't have to I guess, act within the mold that they've created for you. Because I feel like growing up, sorry to get onto the side, but for me growing up, I felt like I had to adhere to like be like, well, no, yes, I do speak Farsi because people assume that I speak Farsi because I'm Afghan, and then not talk about how much I speak Pashto like in the early years of when I was here. So yeah, not being limited. Just know that people have very different experiences when they come here, and they want to share that. So being open is always best.
Yeah. Well, Sanga, this has been a joy to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Mhm.
coming on and for sharing on
Mhm.
Mosaics. I really appreciate what you're doing and wish you all the best as you graduate soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Holly.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Hey, before we leave you for today's episode, after Sanga and I talked for our initial episode, there was some really sad news nationally. Two National Guard members were shot, one was killed. And it was a shock and a grief collectively as a community to see this kind of violence ever committed against anybody, and to see families go through that. So Sangha and I did not talk about that because at the time of our initial conversation, this hadn't happened yet. The person suspected of this shooting does happen to be somebody who is from Afghanistan. And so that community faced very swift repercussions for an action that they had nothing to do with. So since that happened on November 26th, any kind of visa or immigration-related application for Afghans, including special immigrant visas for people who are allies serving alongside the U.S. military, those have been put on hold. And then other people from 19 countries that are on a travel ban list, including Afghanistan, are being re-reviewed. So sweeping actions right after this incident. Sanga, I'd love to know from your perspective how this has impacted your community.
Like you said, it is obviously very tragic news, but the direct impact that I see is a lot of fear. I think there is like this general pattern that when one person from a certain nationality, religion, or descent of any ethnicity does something and it's horrific, then people start pointing fingers at each other. And even though people know that they're innocent, because obviously you can't take one person's actions and describe everybody else's, it still creates this fear among people, because although you know you're innocent, you know that it's not a collective thing, people still point fingers at you. So I would say that this growing fear and this growing, I feel like it's already hard for people to kind of assimilate being so new here, but then with something like this happening, then they now have this newfound fear of people are going to perceive me as dangerous, and that's never something that you want to see in people that are trying to build a new life for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it as unfair that somebody would have to be judged based on the actions of somebody else. Like, I've never had to feel that way of somebody who's American-born white woman my age. Like, I've never felt responsible, like, oh no, this is in the news and now people are going to look at me differently. So it is a burden that we need to be aware of and think about, that that's unfair to do, and especially to see it impacting ability to process. These applications are very important for folks. These immigration related requests. Sometimes it means reuniting with your family or not. And so to have that
as well,
yeah. So to have that on pause, it affects career opportunities, it affects families. And so I do hope to see, a swing back toward more reasonable approach to people. And thank you for sharing what you've seen. Anything else you'd want to add on this subject?
I think kind of what you mentioned about just, I guess, like the cuts towards people that have been waiting for so long to get approved. I feel like it is kind of hard for people, especially that worked during the Afghan war alongside U.S. troops, and we're allies in that sense, and that could be controversial in the Afghan political sphere. But for people that have participated in that, and then to kind of get that kind of saying in their face that now you're seen as dangerous when they've risked so much of their lives and so much of their livelihood to help a country, it kind of, I feel for those people, especially now during this time, because now they're viewed in a completely different, horrific sense when they really are not responsible for anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, and I hope it's something that we can move past and just remember who our community members are, and so thankful for people who are here through resettlement. And so thank you for taking the time to do that update with me, and to share more of your story. Thanks. We appreciate you, Sanga.
Of course, Holly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the conversation. For more information on how to be involved with refugee resettlement, please visit idahorefugees.org. Mosaics is produced by the Idaho Office for Refugees with grant support from the M.J. Murdoch Charitable Trust. Music by the Afrosonics. Production in partnership with SB Studios.